Hey, welcome on back. As always, I'm Carl with Target's Attitude, absent-minded professor of knives and all things sharp. It's Monday, so it's knife basics, what you really need to know. So go ahead, pull up a chair, sit on the floor, and make yourself comfortable. Class is about to begin. Today, we're looking at knife types. Yes, knife types. Or perhaps I should say blade shapes. Pretty much the same thing in a way, but before we get too far into that, let's get the syllabus work out of the way, shall we? For those of you who are new to the channel, welcome. We do Knife Basics 101, what you really need to know here on Monday. On Fridays, we normally review knives. Occasionally, I'll review with light or camping gear, survival gear, something like that. For those of you who have been around for a while, well, welcome back. Glad to see you. You know what question I'm going to be asking you, right? Yep, that's it. Have you subscribed yet? Come on, man, it's easy. Hit that button right down there. It says subscribe. Hit the bell next to it. You get notified every time I do a new video. Win-win situation. Win for you because you get notified every time I do a neat new video. Win for me because, let's be honest, the more subscribers I have, the easier it is to get all these neat new things. But enough of that. Let's get on to class, shall we? For those of you who are new, you'll notice that there are a ton of different shapes of blades. Why? Well, each one is a little different, and they each have their own name. And most of the time, the use goes way, way back into history. But let's take a look at a few of them, and let's talk about them. Let's see what we can do. We'll start with one of the more classic knives around. This is from Case. And it's just a beautiful knife, even though it's been well used. It's called the Sodbuster. And you notice it's got a straight back, doesn't dip at all, and the blade kind of comes up to meet it. What this does is it gives you good slicing ability, good cutting ability, not much penetration power perhaps, but enough to get the job done. So it's just a good classic knife blade. More knives nowadays, though, are going to have either a clip point, and let's see here, I think this one has a clip point. No, this is a drop point. Let's see here, well, that's okay. Got a clip point right here. It's not only found on fixed blades, but on pocket knives. You notice the blade comes straight out. Then it looks like someone cut off the top of it so that the tip goes way down and is in line with the handle. That gives you much better penetration power, much better, I hate to say stabbing, but yeah, stabbing. Lets you get into something to start the cut a lot easier. You'll find a lot of hunting knives are clip points. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Then you have what's commonly referred to as a drop point. And we'll use this one to illustrate the drop point. You notice, it comes out, but then instead of having a bite taken out of it, it just kind of drops down in a nice curve. Again, it gives you a good tip for penetrating, but a great belly for slicing. This is probably the most common blade design today, other than the clip point. This one is also, you notice it's kind of dropping down, but it's not, doesn't have a pronounced drop. This gives you kind of the best of both worlds. It gives you the penetrating power of a clip point, or close to it, but it still provides the big belly of the traditional straight blade. You can get into pocket knives, and let's start with this one. Okay. As you can see, this has a clip point. It's more of a the clip covers more of the knife than it did on the other one, and you've got a more curved tip. Again, great for slicing. It also has second blade, and this is called a spay point. You notice it's straight out, and then the very end is clipped off, and the blade is straight out and then curves up to meet it. What this does, you have a little bit of a tip so you can stab into something if you need to, but it's really made for controlled slicing. As you could guess from the name spay, this was the type of blade that farmers used to use when they needed to neuter animals, because it gave them great cutting control, so they could cut exactly what they needed to without running the risk of damaging the animal unexpectedly. Similar to the spay point tip is, let's see here. Hey Wheels, what you doing, buddy? Not that blade. Here it is. This is called a sheep's foot, and a lot of times it'll be a lot longer than this one, but again, it comes straight out and then straight down. No tip whatsoever to speak of.
Can we order something later?
Yes, we can order something later. Let Daddy finish shooting his video first, okay, buddy?
Okay.
Thank you. But the sheep's foot was originally designed to trim the hooves of sheep. And they've got a similar shaped blade, which I thought I had brought out, but I don't see it now, called a Warneke. And it's the only difference between the sheep's foot and the Warneke is the Warneke has a gentle curve starting back here and going down to meet the tip. And as I say, this particular style of knife is called a Stockman. And you'll notice it's got standard clip point. It's got the sheep's foot. It's got, come on, stiff knife. It's got the spay tip. And it's got a drop point. The reason this is called a Stockman is that originally this was a favorite knife of people working the stockyards. It gave them all the different blades they might need all in one knife. Of course, the ones they were using were a lot bigger because a main blade this short wasn't all that useful to them. But that's the way it came to be. Yeah. This is commonly called a trapper because it's got the two blades someone running a trapping line is most likely going to need. Or at least that's the theory. But back to knife styles. This one is called a hawkbill or a talon. And this particular knife was a linesman's knife. The biggest use of this is that the hook can grab into something and make it slicing very, very easy. This style of knife is with that style is often used by people putting in floors, linoleum, carpets, that sort of thing. If it was a little thinner and a little bit more of a talon shape, it would probably be favored by fishermen and people who work on ships, because again, you grab a hold of the line you're trying to cut and pull, and it's not going to let the line go. It's going to hold it in and pull it right into the cutting edge. But this is not made for cutting away from you. This is made for cutting mainly with the tip being pulled towards you. But if you're a lineman, if you're install linoleum or carpet, you probably have one of these somewhere around. Very handy. Let's see here. What shall we look at next? Okay. This is what would be called a trailing point. You notice the tip is way above the handle here. This style of knife, this particular one, was actually part of a steak knife set. No, steak knives do not have to be serrated now if they're made properly and kept sharp properly. But the whole point of a trailing point is that it lets you get into meat and cut it easily, which is why if you ever go to your grocery store and watch the meat cutters in the meat department, they're going to be having big, long versions of this with even more of a curve on it. And that's what they use because it does such a great job of cutting primals into steaks or roasts or anything like that. And it's not bad for skinning purposes either, so you will find some hunting knives that have the trailing point on them. Next one we're going to look at. And this is one of my recent reviews, so you've probably seen it. This is called a Tonto, specifically an American Tonto. Difference between an American Tonto and a Japanese Tonto is that this chisel point here is going to have more of a curve on it on most of the Japanese style Tontos. But the basics are still the same. For all practical purposes, you've got two blades in one. You've got a cutting edge here, and you've got a chisel stabbing edge here. And that's... Some people will tell you that this took its inspiration from the Japanese swords. No, the Tonto actually was used for centuries. Some will tell you that the original Tontos were made by taking the broken off tips of samurai swords and putting a handle on it. Personally, I find that unlikely. I mean, if the blade's already broken once, why would you trust it not to break again? I sure wouldn't. So, just don't believe it. I think they were purposely made. And what a lot of people won't tell you is that they were often carried by the wives of samurais as a defensive weapon. I mean, yes, their wives may have been sheltered and all, but they were still taught how to defend themselves. So, American Tonto is great for punching into boxes. Hell, I've even seen super thick Tonto blades being used to punch into car doors. It's handy where you need to open things up in a hurry, or a lot of things in a hurry. And it's just a good, handy, all-around blade. And we're going to look at one more knife here. Now, some people refer to this one as a modified Tonto. I can see why. I mean, compared to the real Tonto, they're almost mirror images of each other. But the more traditional name and classic name for this one is a sax. This basic design, nice out to sharp clip, still gives you a usable stabbing tip, even if the tip is down at the base of the handle. This is the way most of the Vikings designed their knives way back when they were still going a Viking in this winter. And it's got its drawbacks, but it's still very intriguing looking knife. It is very traditional. It's a good cutter. Doesn't have much of a belly, so you're not going to get the slicing action that you will with, say, the trailing point or the clip point or the drop point. But it's still going to be nice for slicing, almost like the sheep's foot, Warnke, and the Spey point. Okay. But it's also got a lot of stabbing ability, so it can stab into things and open them easily. All in all, it's still a very handy knife. I just realized that the one knife I did not have out here to show you was a spear point. And I apologize for that. That was kind of a mistake on my part. Spear point is common enough. I should have had that out to show you. But the spear point has the tip in the center. And it kind of curves on the spine down to meet the tip very evenly, so that and the blade has a nice belly that curves up to meet the tip, so the tip is right in line in the middle of the knife. And if you ever see a classic dagger, they are spear point knives. The only difference is that most spear points are only sharpened on one edge, and can be folding knives, whereas by definition, dagger is a fixed blade knife and is sharpened on both edges. That distinction is starting to get a little blurred nowadays, especially with Kershaw's XCOM and the Stedman hand, but those are two of the exceptions that prove the rule, so to speak. Other thing I've heard people talk about, and this is a little annoying to me, almost a pet peeve, so to speak. They'll talk about a kukri tip. And then they'll show you something with even more of a drop than this. I don't have a true kukri to show you. And so this part is a clip point with a false edge. And those people will argue that this is just a recurve. What I was taught, and what a lot of books still insist, is kukri refers to a type of recurve where you've got a wider blade near the tip than you do near the handle. It's forward heavy so that it just naturally chops easily. And there's nothing I've seen anywhere that says a kukri has to have the clip point and the false edge up here. But you know what? Kukri is just a really handy knife, and one I need to get for my collection. I just haven't seen one that is a real Nepal kukri that they weren't asking ridiculous money for yet. As soon as I find it, one will be showing up in my collection, I promise you. But it gives you the quick rundown of the basics. Helps you get an idea of what people are talking about when they start talking about all these various knife shapes and blades. And hopefully clears a few things up for you. I hope you enjoyed. We'll go ahead and post a couple videos over here for your enjoyment that I think you'll like to kind of keep on going. And as always, you can subscribe by hitting this little shield target over here. Meantime, you take care. We'll see you next week. Bye now.